Hello, one and all. Welcome to my videography. I'm your host, JD. It's a bit chilly this morning, but let's start anyway. Episode 5, The Early Years. Today, I will tell you about my past, from birth until I graduated from high school, including my interests and activities. It might be a little long, but whatevs. It's kind of like a teaser video, giving an amalgam of different topics but focusing on none. It should be interesting, so give it a watch. Contrary to the image I might have painted, these were actually some of the best years of my life, culminating in my crowning achievement. Keep in mind, this was a time before computers were mainstream, before the internet and cell phone usage. Disclaimer, my memory isn't perfect. There will be a lot of overlap and disconnect, so it could be a bit confusing, but try to understand that time in history. Let's go all the way back to the beginning. I was born several million years ago in a distant star system, long ago extinct, upon a dying world filled with life. I managed to escape in my spaceship, hurtling through the cosmos to this new world, Earth, teeming with new life. My spaceship crashed into the ocean, where I was teleported into the future, which is now 40 years in the past. Is what I'd like to believe happened, but in actuality, my journey to this world was hardly ceremonious. I scarcely remember the first 3 years of my existence. Some of my earliest memories were, of course, my father playing asteroids on the Atari 2600. There was a boy my mother babysat for, Paul, with whom I played with He-Man action figures and playsets, if you call what we were doing playing. Sometimes I watched Sesame Street or Disney shows, other things like that. Then I started kindergarten and was thrust into this strange environment, surrounded by people I hadn't known at all. It wasn't all that bad. I still kept mostly to myself. I started playing Atari around that time. Then I was thrust into first grade and started getting more or less acclimated to this new lifestyle. I chatted or otherwise played with a few classmates. I had my first crush, Christina. My mother had several friends who had children, and with these children I played sometimes, although they did not go to my school, so I saw them infrequently. Two in particular, Anthony and Robert, were avid gamers and introduced me to several Sierra games like Quest for Glory and Manhunter New York. Around this time, my family got our first computer, an IBM PC XT. When I could, I started using this to play as well. I learned some basic computer applications, such as Multimate word processing and Lotus 123 spreadsheet applications, as well as Typing Tutor to teach me typing in a fun way. Later on, we got DBase 3 Plus, so I also learned database management. So by the time I was 8, I was already good at using the computer. I loved Saturday morning cartoons, as I mentioned in one of my earlier videos. So I had GoBots action figures, which I shared with my younger brother. Then there was Bionic 6 and Pole Position, two awesome Saturday morning cartoons. And they had such awesome theme songs. I think the theme songs were the reason I got into such shows. Those were just magical times. But I was incredibly naive, and I thought those shows just always were and always would be. Besides the GoBots toys, I also had Legos, which seemed to have always been around. So I enjoyed building things. Then dinosaurs ruled the earth, or at least Saturday morning television. So I developed a long-lasting interest in dinosaurs. I'll get more into that in a later video. By that time, I was in second grade and was starting to spend more time with my friends. I had two somewhat close friends at this time, Don and Greg, and we spent time together from time to time. Nintendo had just released its first video game system, and it was all anyone was talking about. So I started getting into Nintendo games. It wouldn't be until later that year that I would actually get my first Nintendo system, which was perhaps my greatest Christmas gift of all time. I still played a lot of computer games also. Also, in second grade, I developed my second crush, a girl named Kelly. I held on to feelings for her for quite some time, and even got her a bouquet of roses. As far as school was concerned, I was a master. I just thought everyone was good at school, so I wasn't all that special. I was good at everything except penmanship, but being left-handed, that was understandable. It's not like anything in the world caters to left-handed people. Besides Saturday morning cartoons and the occasional video or computer game, I didn't have any musical influences, but I did listen to a few artists like Debbie Gibson. Music was not a significant part of my life back then. Between second and third grade, I went to Busch Gardens in Virginia with my family. It was really cool, and I rode the roller coasters for the first time, especially the Loch Ness Monster and the Big Bad Wolf coasters. So that was cool. I was also watching a lot of Disney cartoons after school, especially shows like DuckTales and Chip and Dale's Rescue Rangers. In fourth grade, I went to Disney World in Florida with my family and relatives, but wasn't all that impressed with it, spending most of my time in the hotel watching Disney cartoons. But I saw a few interesting shows like the Indiana Jones Stunt Show and Michael Jackson's Captain EO 3D. By fourth grade, I became fully immersed in Nintendo and also really enjoyed the music from games like Mega Man 3 and Wizards and Warriors. I think the music is what got me to like the games to begin with. At school, I played with other students during recess, two in particular named Chris and Joseph. At first, we role-played Ghostbusters, but eventually started playing Suicide. It's a ball game. Look it up. So I continued to look forward to Suicide every day. In third and fourth grades, I had a friend named Patrick. He used to play a lot of Nintendo, mainly Punch-Out, but was also interested in sports. So with him, I joined Little League Baseball, and did that for one summer, but I didn't like it and stopped after the first year. Also, every Tuesday, I had to attend a religious instruction class that I absolutely hated because it took away from my TV time. So eventually I quit that too. In fourth grade, I met perhaps my closest friend ever, Harlan, who had just moved into my neighborhood. I often had lunch with him and went to his house to play Nintendo. He had Zelda and Metroid, so it was a good time. Then, in fifth grade, I met another friend named Darren, from Iowa of all places. But I only knew him for 1 year, so we didn't become close friends. The three of us ate lunch together in the cafeteria. Sometime in fifth grade, my father ended up moving to Staten Island, so in 1990, he bought my younger brother and I some Game Boys to play while we took the hour-long trek to his apartment. Then we usually just watched TV and played video games while we were there. Good times. I'm sure you're sensing a trend here. So in my elementary school, fifth grade was the last year, so I graduated from elementary school and moved up to junior high. Once again, surrounded by an unfamiliar environment and people I didn't know, so my social anxiety kicked into high gear. Also, Harlan had moved back to Florida, so I never saw him again. I hadn't made any friends while I was in junior high. Most of the people from my elementary school I no longer saw for whatever reason, so I just kept to myself, occupied with video games, Super Nintendo, which had just been released that year. I continued to be interested in dinosaurs, and now there was a lot of Nintendo themed cartoons on TV to watch. I still watch Disney cartoons in the afternoon. I walked home from school every day and occasionally met up with a few other students, namely Joe and Josh, and we chatted while we walked home, then went our separate ways. I wouldn't consider them close friends, but we did spend some time together. I should point out that, although my family was mostly independent, we did do a few things together. We ate dinner together as a family at the kitchen table with the television on. Usually we watched Full House while we ate in silence. We also sometimes had a nice breakfast together on Sundays. The Sunday breakfast tradition continued with bagels. At one point, my parents bought us a role-playing board game, Hero Quest, that we played as a family maybe once or twice. My mother was absolutely not a gamer, and my older brother had better things to do with his time. Then it became part of the visitation routine with my father and younger brother. With Super Nintendo, I found the music I loved the most. I spent more time on that system than in doing anything else. I still excelled at school. I continued to get high grades in all subjects except English, which I was still doing fairly well in. But that's because my English teachers straight up hated me. I continued to watch Disney cartoons until about 1996. That's when I got into Japanese anime, starting with Sailor Moon, and then others followed. I also got into Zatoichi, the Blind Samurai. In 1995, we got our first online software, America Online, so I could communicate with others, especially those who shared my hobbies. But I'll leave that for another video. By the time I was 14, I started losing interest in dinosaurs, and my godfather garnered my interest in birds. That lasted for a year or two. Then, with Jurassic Park and the advent of chaos theory, I started getting more interested in mathematics. This I continued to the end of high school and even into college. I started doing Sudoku puzzles as well. I've always been highly impressionable. In 1995, I started watching Captain Planet and the Planeteers, and consequently became interested in environmentalism. This became one of the determining factors in my life. I wanted to be a Planeteer. I dedicated myself to protecting the environment. I always recycled and reused whatever I could. I started donating money to environmental organizations like Rainforest Action Network and World Wildlife Fund. Even though I wasn't earning money, I was able to spend it. I even joined a club, WAR, Wanta Animal Rights and Recycling, so I could do my part to help the environment. It was a very important part of my existence, and still is to this day. However, giving money every month to two environmental organizations burdened my finances. So in 1996, I had my first job. I worked as a custodial aide in my elementary school that summer, earning $5 an hour, cleaning every surface, scrubbing every toilet, and painting every wall in what was a grueling summer. Suffice to say, I never wanted to work after that. I was also incredibly passionate about learning. I was interested in so many different and unrelated topics, mostly because I had such incredible teachers. But back then, I had no interest or desire in teaching whatsoever. Because of Final Fantasy in English class, I started learning about mythology and Arthurian legends. I also gained an appreciation for Shakespearean plays. I loved all things science, especially astronomy, thanks to my father, and physics, and, of course, mathematics. I did enjoy learning about geography. I even liked home ec and cooking. I didn't much care for art because I wasn't good at it. I also didn't like shop class because I wasn't good at making things. But at that time, I enjoyed playing with Legos. especially technical Legos, and liked mechanical design. So my grades were all above par. I had two love interests in high school. The first, Joanna, was captain of the cheerleading squad and well beyond my reach. The other, with whom I developed a kind of friendship that lasted beyond my high school years. I will talk more about it in a later video. I graduated high school with honors and was salutatorian. I gave a speech and got my diploma, thus ending my early life. And there you have it. Hopefully you were able to glean something useful from my self-presentation. If you liked it, give it a like and subscribe. Also, I have a Patreon for those so inclined. I'll catch us next time.